Last summer at the Paris Olympics, many of you will have seen Angela Carini, who competed in Olympic boxing against Amani Khalif. He punched her in the face and she withdrew after 46 seconds. This August, World Boxing introduced mandatory sex testing to determine eligibility in the female sex category at the upcoming World Boxing Championships. Another example of physical injuries suffered as a result of the incursion of males into women's sports would be Peyton McNabb. She was hit in the face with a volleyball at something like 90 miles an hour by a male. She was diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury, a brain bleed, partial paralysis, and loss of peripheral vision on her right side. She also suffered ongoing memory loss, confusion, and severe headaches. We are rapidly regaining ground. In January of this year, President Trump signed Executive Order 14201, keeping men out of women's sports. I do want to note executive orders aren't laws, so that's the issue with them. The next administration can come in and undo all that. So it's really important to get this into law and through the courts. In July, following the Will Thomas scandal and the ensuing Title IX investigation, the University of Pennsylvania came to an agreement with the Department of Education. The UPenn would restore to female athletes all swimming records and titles which had been stolen by male athletes, issue a public statement to the school's community indicating that they would now comply with Title IX, rescind any guidance which violated Title IX, and send a personalized letter of apology to all impacted female swimmers.
Yes.
Additionally, the Supreme Court of the United States has agreed to hear 2 cases that concern men and boys competing in sports designated for women and girls. So these cases are Lowell versus Hecox and West Virginia versus BPJ, and we just a couple days ago filed amicus briefs in those 2 cases. Our momentum is building. A New York Times poll from January of this year indicated that 79% of registered American voters, including 67% of Democrats, agreed that men and boys should not compete in sports designated as being for women and girls. So there's still a long way to go. I mean, I do want to note that this month there is a school in Temecula, California. I might be mispronouncing that. Temecula, okay. At the James L. Day Middle School in Temecula, California, this month girls were told they needed to file for a mental health exemption if they did not want to share a bathroom or locker room with the boy. So you're not crazy because you don't want to share a bathroom or locker room with the boy. So we still need to fight, but amazing progress has been made, and I brought this panel together to address why we've made such progress in sports and kind of what we can take from this fight and apply to other fights. So I will go ahead and introduce my panelists, from starting closest to me and furthest. So Kim Jones is the co-founder of ICONS, the Independent Council on Women's Sports. ICONS is a network of female athletes and their supporters that advocates for a female protected category. ICONS consults national governing bodies, international federations, and other sports organizations on their policies. ICONS is also currently backing 3 major federal lawsuits, including Gaines versus NCAA in Georgia over the 2022 NCAA National Championships, where a man, Will, or Leah Thomas, won a women's national swimming title. Kim played tennis at Stanford University, where she earned All-American status in both singles and doubles. She was a 3-time NCAA runner-up, NCAA doubles semifinalist, and an individual finalist at the singles NCAA National Indoors. Kim earned her undergraduate and graduate degrees in mechanical engineering from Stanford University. She has been a lifelong advocate for women in sports, serving on the Stanford Athletic Board and working with various sports organizations and athletes over her career. Next, in the middle, is Jennifer Say. Jennifer is an author, filmmaker, retired national champion gymnast, and business executive. A 7-time U.S. women's national team member, she won the 1986 all-around title and was USOC Athlete of the Year. Her 2008 memoir, Chalked Up, exposed abuse in gymnastics. She later produced the Emmy-winning Netflix film Athlete A. Say spent 23 years at Levi Strauss & Company, rising to brand president before resigning in 2022 after opposing COVID lockdowns and school closures. Her second book, Levi's Unbuttoned, chronicles that fight. She is now founder and CEO of XXXY Athletics, the only athletic brand to stand up for women's sports and female athletes. A brand that many of you are decked out in. And then, at the end, Kim McGinnis-Russell, the hippie love coach and barefoot heart warrior, is the mama to four adult children, all athletes: Charlie, Anna, Sam, and Maddie. She is a lifelong athlete, NCAA Division I field hockey and lacrosse at College of William and Mary. She is a girls and women's lacrosse coach for 30 years, coaching youth through international. She is a performance and flow state coach, a boxing coach for people fighting Parkinson's disease, and a PE teacher. She has been inducted into 3 Halls of Fame for coaching and contributing to the game of lacrosse, and was an appointed member of the Women in Sport Commission for World Lacrosse. Since being removed from her job as head women's lacrosse coach at Oberlin College in 2023 for speaking up about males competing in women's sports, Kim has been advocating for women and girls in sports and private spaces, including testifying before Congress, providing expert testimony at the state level, protesting the NCAA, and standing behind President Trump when he signed Executive Order 14201 to keep girls and women's sports female only. She is passionate about helping everyone to feel better in their bodies and find joy every day through movement and holistic and community-based practices. So let's start with our first question. Why has the fight to protect women's sports been uniquely successful?
Well, I think there are a couple reasons why it's made such prominent strides in the last few years. First, I always start out that. Hello? Can you guys hear me? Yeah. I think that it took a galvanizing moment. So thank heavens for Will Thomas in some ways. But it also is, sports is the visible public arena of the difference of the sexes. So you're confronted with an absurdity in front of the public's eyes. It's like the Coliseum, where gender ideology plays out as an absurdity right in front of everyone. So where I think a lot of the rest of gender ideology is hidden behind closed doors and a lot more difficult for the public to understand or sympathize or just see, yeah. So those two things are huge. As far as what I think women did successfully, the most important thing I think we did was have women speak out, and so huge credit to Riley Gaines for taking an enormous mantle on a young woman's shoulders. She just decided she wasn't going to be afraid of anyone at a time when a lot of women were being quelled. So that was huge, but even more important is making sure that the language that women were speaking, all of us were working behind the scenes, talking for a long period of time, reaching out across organizations, across politics, across parts of the country and even the world to say, this is how we're going to speak about this issue. These are the language and the terms we're going to use. We're going to change the way the media is speaking about this, erasing women. We're going to use clear sex-based language. And this is the policy we're advocating for. And we recognize that, if people in New Zealand or the UK were arguing for different policies than those in America, we were going to have a difficult time because we wanted to fight this battle from top down, the IOC, International Olympic Committee, and grassroots, and come at it from all angles. So if we had consistent language and consistent policy from women across the world, we were going to be a lot more successful.
Okay, I have a few points to make. I would warn us against thinking, or I would sort of caution us to think that we have succeeded here. I mean, Carrie, you said phase 6, which is kind of what we're in. It's going to be a long time. I would agree with you. It's a long time. And we have, what are the key indicators that would suggest success? An executive order, which is not law, operates with the force of law. I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding is operates with the force of law while he is president and could just be rewritten next. That's the indication. What else? That 79% of Americans agree with us that women's sports should be for women. You know, I know the vast majority of them are silent because they're still too afraid. So that's not success. An executive order, okay, fine, that's not legislation. So we don't have the cultural win yet. We don't have the legislative win, so we haven't won. In California right now, there are men on the Santa Rosa volleyball team. There are A.B. Hernandez, the boy who went on the track meets, is also competing on a volleyball team. And Gavin Newsom is suing the federal government to continue to allow this to happen. So I'm not saying this to be depressing. I'm saying this to be realistic, which is I don't know how successful we have been. So that's the first thing. But if I were to sort of grant us a little success, I think, or I guess this is my sort of, I think Riley has been a great the face of this movement. She speaks in plain language. It's not hard to understand for the average person what she is saying. And it takes great skill to do that. I say that with real admiration because I think that's what cuts through. And she is a very, I think, strong voice and sympathetic person. We've all seen the pictures. The combination of her sort of plain, straightforward way of communicating with the, what did you call it, Karen? Not triggering event, but the, galvanizing event, as Kim said. That's a really powerful combination. And I think, the last thing I would add is, I love the way you laid out the phases, Karen. I agree that we're in 6. I think the skill required, what we need to do and accomplish together in each of those phases, the skills required to move us to the next are different. And I think we have a cultural fight on our hands right now, which isn't to say that we need to ignore legislation. I mean, I'm the chairperson for a ballot initiative in Colorado to protect women's sports. I think that's really necessary. But I really feel, maybe this is just because this is what I do and this is what I'm good at, but if we get the 80% of people, I'm rounding up, that say they agree with us to actually say it out loud, game over.
Yeah.
And that is not an easy thing. And that is we need to mobilize and create community and move the Overton window and make them feel comfortable wearing that hat to their daughter's soccer game. Most are not. I show up every week at all the games and, I get some pushback, I'll put it nicely, and I get some support. And, every weekend somebody says, oh, I'm allowed to say that out loud. Bit by bit, each of us can move the culture forward and move that, open the Overton window as far as what is acceptable to say. So I think we've got, it's not dismissing the legislative battles we have, but I think this phase requires us to attack it from a cultural perspective. Once the people say, I know I'm going on too long, this is unacceptable. There will be no boys on my daughter's volleyball team or soccer team.
Yes.
When that is the majority expressed opinion, and there's not this manufactured consensus because the loudest bullies speak the most and everybody else with common sense is quiet, once that flips, then we win. And that's going to take a very long time. And I'll say one last thing. When it flips in sports, the whole thing crumbles, which I know is what Kim was getting at. Because the lie that underpins this whole sports fiasco is that men's and women's bodies are no different, and if you say you're a woman, you are. Well, when it crumbles in sports, I do think then you have, it's like it crumbles all the way down. And so it's the tip of the spear. I realize it's not the most important or the only issue, but I think it just is representative of the entire issue, and it's very public and everyone can see it, and the rest will come quickly thereafter. But I think, I'll just end by saying, I think we still have a long way to go. I think this is going to be a many years battle. Sorry, that was a very long answer.
Sorry, Julie. We're going to be in
I would love to say that I think it will be short, but I definitely agree with Jen. As someone who for 5 years worked at one of the most liberal schools in the country and thought I was at the right place, and I was at the right place because I wouldn't have believed what was happening if I hadn't been there. The buy-in to the narrative is so strong, and the ones who aren't buying in are too afraid to speak up. It's going back to the whole thing, depending on what seminar you were listening to, which speaker, the kindness, right? Thinking that they're too afraid that they're going to be looked at as being unkind. And when you see this, and when you actually go out in the communities like we have, and like some of you here have, and you see what is happening, you can't ever unsee it. I can't even stay in my lane anymore. Like, I'm supposed to stay in the sports lane, and I can't stay in that lane. There is too much dark stuff going on. But I will tell you, right now I am volunteering to coach a high school field hockey team at a school where I started the program in the 90s. The head coach and the JV coach are both 42 years old, and I coached both of them. And so I'm just helping, so I can do whatever I want. And so the girls said, well, why aren't you going to be at the game tomorrow? I said, I'm going to speak at a Radical Women's Conference about keeping girls and women's sports female only. They were so excited. So, the tides are changing. The tides are really changing. And it wasn't just one girl. It was the whole group of them. So to see that, because of the other side that I've seen so much of, which is literally a brainwashing, and it was systematically done, and it was strategically done. Because at the beginning, when I'm at Oberlin, I'm like, oh yeah, of course, I accept everyone, I don't care who you want to be. Pronouns, well, I was really grammatically taught correctly, and I don't know how to use they, them, and look at one person.
Yeah.
And you're changing your name. I am 50-some years old. I can't even remember my own kids' names, and now I'm going to change anything I don't know what I'm going to do. And now you're yelling at me because I'm dead naming somebody. So that, I believe we have more of that generation, that, you know, the ones who are in college now to a little bit older, and then it's also getting this out of the schools, because it is in at the youngest levels. It is getting this shit out of the schools. I'm sorry, I like to swear a lot. I have to hold myself back. But we have made progress. For high school girls to be cheering for me, that was huge for me. That was like, and it happened twice, because a smaller group had asked me, well, what do you do? And I'm like, well, and they're like, you do? That's so amazing. Thank you. And I just almost fainted. So good things are happening.
I want to follow up on two things that Jen said. One is about the legislative battle. And this is a realization I've come to as we've followed our lawsuits, the 3 lawsuits that we're doing in federal court. Legislative battles mean nothing. The laws mean nothing if no one will enforce them and no one is accountable for them. So we're running into problems with saying, okay, Title IX is this great law that's supposed to protect women nationwide. It's the only law that we have here in the United States that recognizes women on the basis of sex. And we are seeing in our federal court cases that the judges don't want anything to do with these cases. They're passing them around to another judge as a hot potato, and they're asking questions and putting things off for months on end. They're staying cases because they want to wait until the Supreme Court makes a decision so that they don't have to be the ones accountable. And it's crazy to see that the young girls, even in middle school, all the way up through college and even professional sport, have kind of climbed the ladder of accountability. They've gone begging to their coaches. They've gone begging to their administration and their team owners. They've gone begging to the organizations or the conferences that dictate the policies. They've implored the public, who's largely like inundated the national governing bodies, or in this case NCAA, with letters to say, don't ignore us. All of that falls on deaf ears because all of those All of the letters written, all the voices can be dismissed. All the letters written can go in the circular file. And so the last resort was to take these cases to court and for women to say, hey, does the law mean anything? And now what we're seeing is the judges saying, I don't want to decide this. And I'm going to dismiss people from the case. And whether it's Harvard being dismissed from the Penn swimmers case because they hosted championships. This is running out of time. There's just, I think there's more. So suggesting that the fight is over, that we've had a lot of success, because we have public awareness right now, we are far from victory. We have to have the laws mean something. There has to be accountability in organizations. Women have to know that they can turn somewhere and have someone have their backs. Otherwise legislation is meaningless. The second thing I want to say, of course, I care more about sports because I've seen such broad damage to young girls all the way up through masters, women just trying to get in shape and stay healthy. I don't think we have any excuse not to hit the bullseye on this issue. There is no excuse. It is so public. We have massive public support. But as Jen said, it's going to take a cultural shift to get there. The NCAA right now has a policy that if we get different leadership in the White House, the only thing keeping boys out of girls' sports is the cultural pressure. And if that flips, that policy literally opens the door for anyone. And that is true of almost everything that's gone through in sports. We're at a turning point right now where the public is aware, the stories are out there, people are changing their policies, but we have got to get court decisions that uphold precedent. We have to dot the landscape with women saying, I'm not afraid to sue. It's got to be across the country, whether women are in blue states or red states. We've got to utilize the weapons that say, women matter across the US, not just in states that have leadership that will back them. So the bullseye, because sports also deals with puberty blockers, they've had policies that say, if you blocked your puberty at age 12, you can compete with girls. So it crosses into medicalization, it crosses into the definition of male and female. If we can tell who is male and who is female, we take down any issue associated with Title IX, which we all know has worked its way into hundreds of different policies where women need that recognition. So my hope is that this, because it's the public policy and the difference of the sexes, if we hit the bullseye on this, we reinstate what a woman is, and we protect women from a whole gamut of problems that are going on right now. That's it.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, keep having conversations, keep really having conversations through that loving lens of this is what it is to love a girl and a woman and to support girls and women, because that is really, we've got to hit the women. We've got to hit the women who are not believing that this is the right thing to do. And also, when I've been testifying in states, New Mexico, Maine was over 11 hours of public testimony. I was sitting online in my dining room and turned it up to go have lunch, to go have dinner, to come back, and it still wasn't done. And I recorded a lot of it because I was blown away by what people believe. And that is what we still have to have these conversations to really let them know what is happening. I had a conversation, this is what's happening a lot because of whatever people's media feed is, they believe there's only 10 trans athletes in the NCAA. I said, I had more than 10 at the college where I was, and I had 3, they're all girls who want to be boys on my team. So there were more than 10 at Oberlin College, so don't tell me there's only 10. But that is part of the lies that are being told. Why do you care? I care if there's only one. If Will Thomas is the only one, he affected so many women, and that's the other part. As we're reading stats, it's not just about who's winning, right? It's about how it's affecting multiple girls and women. The other part that I didn't even think about until a friend of mine came to me and said, Kim, my daughter wouldn't even tell me this last year. She waited till she was a sophomore in high school because the daughter didn't want her mom to get involved and, make a fuss. Her whole friend group was not using the bathroom at school all day. They weren't changing their tampons, and they weren't going to use the locker room because they were afraid a boy would be in there. Multiple girls were getting UTIs, and they were all putting themselves at risk of toxic shock syndrome. I hadn't even thought about that one, right? And I guarantee you that's happening in other places too. So there's so much more to this that, again, when we break this, it is not breaking. We are.
Right. I would just add what Kim was saying. Sorry, you're not even have to ask me questions, but we would not accept, the sports governing bodies at this point would not accept one athlete using performance-enhancing drugs. Nobody said, Lance Armstrong, he's the only one, what's the big deal? He wasn't the only one, it was the whole team. But nobody would say that, it's just one person. And it's way more than one. We know now that there were 60 track and field athletes performing at the highest level in the world, at world championship level, that were finalists at the world championship level in the last 20 years. That was just in just track and field, that's one sport. That's one sport. So, but as far as the cultural battle, I have been very kind of loud about protecting female athletes for a very long time, really around abuse. I came up in gymnastics. It's an incredibly abusive environment, emotionally, physically, and yes, there's rampant sexual abuse, which you all know now from the Larry Nassar case. In 2017, I want to reinforce the point about culture. I had the opportunity to sit down with Senator Dianne Feinstein. There were 20 of us athletes, mostly gymnasts. I was like the elder statesman that could talk about, this is not a one-bad apple thing, this is 50 years of abuse of young girls. And she said to us, she was pretty lucid at the time, it was 2017, and she said, I'm going to pass a law and it's not going to make the difference. You have to make the difference to change the culture in the sport. And she was so right, and she did pass a law, and it hasn't made a difference, and abuse is still rampant in the sport. The culture's changed, there's greater awareness of it, but there still isn't the demand to make it different. And unfortunately, parents fall prey to thinking this is not abuse, it's tough coaching, all these things. I'm not saying that it hasn't gotten better. I think it's gotten a tiny, tiny bit better. I'm just saying it's going to take a long time. That law passed in 2018. That story, which was a massive story exposing abuse in the sport, kind of broke in 2016, and here we are, and we're still at it, and I don't believe the culture has changed meaningfully, and I think Senator Feinstein was 100% correct that legislation can only do so much until we change the culture and make that unacceptable. We have to find a way to acknowledge the wins so that we're not totally depressed all the time, so that we feel like we're making progress, but don't become complacent and feel like we won when we still have a lot of work to do. That's all. I'll let you ask a question now.
So one more talking point when you are talking to people, if we are allowing, and here's one of the biggest problems to me, if we're allowing boys and men into girls' locker rooms and bathrooms and telling the girls they have to be quiet about this, and their immediate gut reaction is, I'm unsafe. We are grooming them to be sexually assaulted and trafficked. Yes. So if we have to take that part, don't forget that part when you're talking to the people who are like, oh, it's only one. Also, most people, and I'm gonna say this, think that every single guy who's competing as a woman has cut off his dick. They haven't. Right. All right, they are fully intact when they are competing and when they're getting naked in the locker rooms and stuff. So make sure you know that as well, because these people think that's not true.
Not to mention that most are heterosexual. That's another.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. And getting aroused in the locker rooms. And honestly, one of the reasons I think we've gotten to where we have is because a lot of the men who are fathers and brothers and dads have gotten behind us as well. So we do have, you know, most of the men on our side on this one, for sure.
What insights from the fight to save women's sports can we bring to other aspects of the fight for women's sex-based rights?
Start again and march down. March down.
Well, I still just wholeheartedly believe if we hit the bullseye on this one, that everything else is going to ripple effect and take care of it. So, because I think the whole problem with every other issue that we're facing when it comes to gender ideology is that men can't become women, and just absorbing that as fact and making sure that it's not, that, you know, isn't violated or isn't tried to be forced down our throats. But that if you hit the bullseye in sports, I think you end up with free speech being solved. I think you end up with, obviously you end up with sports being solved and sports policy. Locker rooms are totally associated with that. You end up with clear language. If you hit the policies right, you end up with sex screening and being able to tell who's male and who's female. And from there, you end up, and nicely, I think, is that this is all linked up to federal law that protects women across the country, and it's 50 years enshrined. So if you clearly define male and female, I think you end up with prisons, and you end up with medical, and you end up with education. I mean, it's like, it's going to take time for the implications of that to work its way through, but I mean, it's just so visible that we get, if you hit this correct, then you solve a lot of the problems that are associated with it.
Yeah, I mean, because what underpins this, as I said before, is that there are two sexes, there's male and female, and that's reality. That's material reality. If that is established through sports, I don't know how to do this legally, Carrie can do that, but it gets applied beyond sports. That's then it should have been an established fact. We have to reify that fact, and it can get applied more broadly. I don't think they're separate fights per se, and if that makes sense. I think it's all of a piece. But I think a key learning for me, or something we can all, I think, acknowledge, is that it has to be sort of fought on multiple fronts, right? Legislatively, politically, and yes, culturally. I think you have to wage the battle on, there's probably more, but those three fronts. And I think it needs to be waged not just nationally, but at the local level. You know, the brave moms and the students, the high school students who speak at school board meetings. You know, these are really compelling instances of young girls speaking up in their own defense, and I think there's nothing more heartbreaking to me. I mean, Kim touched on it, but the idea that a young girl, these are girls, these are 13, 14-year-old girls speaking up in their own defense, and they're told repeatedly, sit down, be quiet, don't speak, you don't matter, your feelings don't matter. We do create future victims, honestly, and we go backwards, telling women that their well-being doesn't matter, his feelings matter more than your rights. So it just terrifies me what is done to a generation of young girls, but I am also encouraged, and there's a bunch of young girls in Colorado in the Loveland School District who have spoken up in my state, and I think that sort of, you know, again, I go back to, we have to kind of fight this battle in multiple ways, and we have to use the people that are good at different things. You know, it's one skill set to kind of wage the cultural battle, another to do it politically, another to do it legislatively, another to do it at the local level, and every person's voice matters. You know, the one most negative one-on-one interaction I've had was at my daughter's soccer game maybe 8 months ago, and it was with a woman, a lesbian woman who I had known for several years. Our daughters go to school together and they play soccer together. And she approached me, and I was like, oh Lord, here it comes. And I could tell from the way she was walking over. My daughter had on a shirt like this at practice, and she said to me, I really, I don't know if you know what that shirt means, but I think you really know. And she said, you need to not have Ruth wear, her name's Ruth, wear that anymore. It's a practice. And I was like, girl, no, why? You can't tell. And I think she thought, well, she didn't know it was my company. But I think she was so used to saying whatever the heck she wants and everybody's quiet. And I didn't get mad. I spoke quietly, calmly. She threw out all the dumb lines about general checks and all the stupid stuff, and there's only 10 athletes. Like it's like they were programmed into her brain, all those stupid tropes that we hear, and I wouldn't leave and finish the conversation. And she finally ended it by saying, well, I trust you'll have her not wear that anymore. And I said, you would be wrong. And I walked away. And then I bought t-shirts for half of the parents on the team. I mean, that wasn't hard for me. I went to the closet at work and I got t-shirts. But if 6 parents show up, she doesn't bother any of us anymore. She has been made to believe that she is not only righteous, but in the majority. She's neither righteous nor in the majority. And it's up to us to not just be that person for all those, her name's Monica, all those moms all over the country at every soccer game and field hockey game, but then to get the other people that agree with you to say so too, because they are not the majority. We are the majority. And so I just feel like that more than anything, I mean, I'm doing it on like a bigger scale with the brand, but that more than anything is our job, is to get all of those people to just say it out loud. Anyway, I think that's a learning, is we fight this on multiple fronts, and nationally as well as locally, and you in your own community, it matters so much. I mean, she doesn't bother any of us now. I think that says something. And then speak in plain language. That's my other one, is I think that's really helpful. I think that brings people around. I think it resonates emotionally. I'm not saying don't use big words. I felt prey to myself, but I think we cut through a bit more when we can appeal to emotion rather than even sanity. I think appealing to people's emotions is motivating. It's just motivating.
I don't have much to add to those, perfectly said. I will add just, again, we aren't hearing about all of the boys who are playing right now. So I get called, my boyfriend says, so-and-so's friend in Colorado needs to talk to you. There were 2 boys on the JV team. So when we're talking about team sports and at lower levels, you're not hearing about it, and there's a lot more at these lower levels because it's become okay everywhere. And the people who don't think it's okay, for the most part, again, are keeping their mouths shut. And the loud ones are the people who are celebrating the boys playing with the girls and saying, oh, don't you just want everybody to be included? They are included, they can play with the boys. And when I was having a conversation with a high school girls soccer coach in the state of Delaware, which is where I'm from originally, he said there was a guy playing on one of the other high school teams, and a coach came out and started screaming, "That's a dude! That's a dude!" And the coach got kicked off the field. The coach got kicked off, and I don't know if he got kicked out for the whole season. But, we've had these different ideas. Okay, well, he coaches girls basketball, but he'll go play pickup with the boys at lunch every day. I said, why don't you get all the boys to come out for the girls' team? They have to allow them to play and just show everybody how ridiculous it is. Like, if we have to do that to make a statement, you do it once and everybody finally sees how insane it is. And at first I was like, no. But it is still, like, for where we are and for winning, we're not winning until there's nobody doing this, right? We're not winning till every single girl has a chance and isn't afraid to open her mouth, right? And isn't like looking like this over her shoulder when she's in a bathroom or a locker room. I mean, we'll always be looking over our shoulders when we're in a bathroom or a locker room, but now we're allowing them to come in and teaching our girls that that's okay. I'm sorry, this shit's gotta stop. Okay, I'm gonna go. I'm off.
So I just want to address because I don't think we've tackled it specifically, but how to bring what we've learned into other fights for women's recognition and women's rights. And I think one of the biggest problems of the last 15 years is that we've been living under an era of, as everyone's been expressing, of self-censorship. And I think the words like, "You're a hateful woman if you're speaking up for your rights," or "Don't you just want to be nice and this is your role?" I think those, "You're a bigot," "You're transphobic," "You're right wing," all of these labels are losing their sting. And I think that that is beneficial for us. Like if we want to fight back pornography or the over-sexualization of girls, like giving women a voice by showing them that we're not afraid and we're unashamed to stand up for what we believe in, no matter the cost. And I know it was a traumatic event for a lot of us, but most of us in this room know why Charlie Kirk was shot. He was shot because he was saying men can't be women. And there are a lot of us here that spend our lives saying those same things and realize that that's been the risk we're taking on. But it has also galvanized a lot of people to say, hey, we can't have assassinations over speaking our minds. We can't live under that threat of terror. It's not life. So I think there are waves of change that are coming out from this I think we're recognizing that we collectively have to be able to speak our minds. And the women in this room, we have to be examples to young girls that we are not ashamed to speak up for them and for ourselves. So I think that will benefit the future.
Yeah, one thing, because this was sort of touched upon yesterday, and we have to also not be afraid to work together on this. I mean, Kara talked about this a lot, but we can't be so afraid of being called alt-right, white Christian nationalists. I get that one a lot, which is fun as a Jewish atheist. It's like the dumbest thing ever. But I don't care. I've been called these names now for, about 6 years, and I did really care at first. I did. I lived in San Francisco. Being called a Republican is basically a swear word in San Francisco, right? And I cared, and I tried to explain why I wasn't, and I tried to explain all the ways I wasn't racist or Christian nationalist, Christo-fascist. I get that one a lot. I didn't even know what that was. I had to look it up. I don't care now because it's so dumb. And it's just a tactic to prevent you from speaking up because you're afraid of being called that name. And it's not just you, because at some point they realize you won't care. But your friends care, and they're like, I don't want to be called that name Jen's being called. And you have to, I know a lot of people have said it, and it's old and it's boring, but you also get it as guilt by association. It's not just if you take a stance, but if you take it and you talk to somebody like Charlie Kirk, or if you talk to somebody like Riley Gaines, or if whoever it is. I mean, Julie, in your interview with Ruth What's-Her-Bucket from the New York Times, what's her last name? Graham. Ruth Graham, right. Sorry, yeah. I mean, she literally said to you, and never included, doesn't it make you uncomfortable to associate with someone like Riley Gaines, who's a conservative? And your answer was genius, which is no. Why? I never felt more comfortable with how open I am to different viewpoints, and I just, there's a lot of talk about it in the room, and I think we really do need to set that discomfort aside, because I, for one, want to win. And if we do purity tests, we will not win. We will stand by ourselves, or not by ourselves, but 40 or 50 or 60 of us in a corner, and we'll keep screaming with our fists in the air to get off my lawn, and we will lose. And so we have to put all that aside, that you care about the name, and you care about, a guilt by association. There's a large cohort of us that agree, that cuts across party lines, and if we don't work together, we'll lose. That's sort of it. At the end of the day, I care most about winning for my daughter. That's it. Yeah.
We have time for one or two audience questions. If you want to come up to the mics on either side. Yeah, Beth, go ahead.
Thank you for all of that. I just wanted to get your thoughts on boycotting as a strategy.
How ironic. I was thinking about addressing that. I actually think it parallels nicely into the woman that was speaking over lunch, the academic. Yeah, when she answered the question about, can you not hear me? What?
Donna Hughes.
Oh, Donna, sorry. When she was talking, a woman was asking about, like, should we just withhold our vote? And I kind of immediately in my head when I heard that thought about that as being like the advocacy for boycotting. I'm of two minds on this. It only works if you do it loudly. And so get yourself involved in the game, be able to tell your story. So I tell women, if you don't, because women are sitting out, they're being removed of an opportunity because the boy bullied them out of it, and they're being silenced, stripped of their voice and their ability to tell their story or even to sue that something happened to them on the field. So if you're good, I advocate get involved and get loud, but I also think boycotting serves a purpose. If you can boycott on principle and make a spectacle of it.
Yeah.
So if you take a knee, like Stephanie Turner did, that brought a huge amount of attention, right? That's huge. If you can stand at the starting block and say, I'm not taking off, and then tell your story off later, or if you go to the media, go to Jen
I was
and
gonna say, let
tell
us help
stories.
you know, because that doesn't happen by accident. You guys know this. Like those stories blowing up, it rarely is accidental. And so, if you know, I fully support boycotting. I think the boycotts in the Mountain West Conference, the San Jose State volleyball team was huge and engendered a lot of support and awareness. More people were willing to speak out, but you have to get it all set up behind the scenes, and Kim can help and I can help if you know someone that wants to do it. Like you have to plan it so that it makes a big statement.
Those boycotts of the volleyball teams, that was a year-long project.
Wow.
That was an enormous amount of work behind the scenes.
Wow.
So those are hugely effective, but you have to talk to the players, you have to get them motivated, you have to give them the storyline to reach out to you. They have to know what's coming ahead of time. They have to have time to build their confidence and their courage, or even to consider, do I play and do this, or do I boycott and do this? Because it's up to them. You can't force anyone to do anything, right? It's just, these are your options. What do you want to do? We'll help you either way. So I think part of the reason we've created icons in the first place, and Julie was there way back at our first conference, is just because there wasn't an organization for women to turn to say, help me, I'm in this. Like, what can you do if I don't want to be public, if I do want to be public, if I want to boycott or don't want to boycott, if I want to just give information, or like, we needed somewhere to turn because that didn't exist. And so I think, as Jen is saying, just if you know people that need help, we'll help.
Thank you.